The UFC's ending the 2024 pay-per-view schedule with an absolute cracker of a card with awesome matchups all the way up and down, but in a rare occurrence, the most unfamiliar guy on the card might have his name on the marquee. Kai Asakura is walking into his UFC debut against a dominant champion and pound-for-pound top 15 fighter on the planet, Alexandre Pantoja. The hardcore fans might know Asakura for his run the past few years in Japan and his awesome and entertaining fighting style, but it's fair to say that most fans will be getting their first experience of him this weekend. So let's take a deeper dive into what we know about Kai Asakura and the deeper implications of this fight for a weight class that some fans think the UFC has mishandled for decades. That's right, Fight Week is upon us again with UFC 310, and being partnered with DraftKings, you know we have you covered. All new customers who bet just $5 on anything will get $150 of bonus bets if their bet wins. And you can stay in on the action and use that $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including total number of rounds and method of victory. And if sports betting isn't yet available in your state, don't worry, you can still get in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and be in to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use the promo code ONPOINT, bet just $5 on any wager and receive $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's promo code ONPOINT only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. I'm Max from MMA On Point, and this is The Unfamiliars for Kai Asakura. With the final K1 Dynamite in 2010 and the death of Dream in 2012, it seemed like the lifeblood of Pride FC and of Japanese MMA on a grand scale had finally dried up. Shuto and Pancrase have continued on a much smaller level, but that energy and flair, as well as the massive fights and gigantic events, was gone from the land of the rising sun. So in 2015, when Rizin rose from the ashes to give us back those one-night tournaments and soccer kicks in a four-sided ring, the MMA world couldn't wait to see what we'd get. But it took a few years for Rizin to find its proper golden age, and that came with its lightest division, 135 pounds. Led by former UFC title challenger Kyoji Horiguchi, they started putting on incredible fights and building stars like Manel Kape and Naoki Inoue, and cross-promoting huge fights with Bellator guys like Sergio Pettis and Juan Archuleta. With bantamweight being the smallest available weight class in the promotion, almost all of these guys would be flyweights in the USA, but these fights were as far from the UFC's understanding and stereotype of flyweight as you can imagine. They were massive, violent spectacles, almost always ending by finish and always headlining enormous fight cards. And emerging on top of the heap in this crazy scene was a skinny kid from Aichi Prefecture, Kai Asakura. Growing up in Japan, Asakura, alongside his elder brother Mikuru, started his martial arts training early with sumo and karate in elementary school, but his love for fighting came from a less traditional and honorable area, the pavement. The Asakura boys would regularly find themselves scrapping on the concrete in street fights with other boys from their town. That's just what these boys are about, and they weren't afraid to swing at their own flesh and blood either. As an 18-year-old, Kai was called out in the middle of the night by his own brother for a scrap, and they tried to take each other's head off. Kai was way smaller, but he held his own, and this is what made him realize maybe he could have a career at this whole violence thing. Before making it to Rizin, Kai's career was explosive to say the least. 9 wins, 1 loss, never seeing a judge's scorecard once, and that last part really encapsulates this guy's philosophy on fighting. Every time he got on the mic, he reminded the audience that he was there to bring excitement back to Japanese MMA and bring back those glory days. He wanted to put on a show, and he always did, closing down his opponents and trading blows like rock'em sock'em robots. And in those exchanges, he usually won out with power that didn't seem to belong in the hands of a guy that small. With a 5-fight win streak in Rizin, Kai found himself staring down against the man who, at the time, might have been the best flyweight and bantamweight on the planet, Kyoji Horiguchi. After losing to Demetrius Johnson in the middle of that guy's impossible GOAT run, Kyoji won 3 more in the UFC before electing to leave and head back to Japan for Rizin. And at the time, UFC letting this guy leave was shocking to me. He was 7-1 in the UFC, with that one being against a certain unbeatable all-time legend of the sport. How many Asian stars did the UFC have that they could try to build up and take overseas? The opportunity was glorious, but the UFC just had no interest and happily let this diamond in the rough go, which really speaks to their passion for the weight class in general at the time. Horiguchi, meanwhile, went on an all-time run, a 12-fight win streak with some insane finishes. and became the Rizin and Bellator champions simultaneously. MMA media was salivating over the possibility of a fight against UFC champion Henry Cejudo, with the lineal championships of all three of those major promotions on the line.
I want to fight us Henry Cejudo.
And why not a Rizin, Bellator, and UFC co-promotion to find out who's number one, right?
Yes, I wanna.
And then in a non-title bout, Kai Asakura in his home prefecture, with literally 99% of the MMA world picking against him, faced off against Kyoji Horiguchi and did this. The place exploded. A star was born in Japan that night, and that was how Kai Asakura continued his rising career. Win or lose, violent and exciting at the top of the card, and as popular in the ring as he was on his YouTube channel with 1.4 million subscribers. In the Japanese MMA world, this guy is a superstar.
僕はライジンのベルトを返上して UFC に行きます。
So why is he walking into the cage this weekend with basically no fanfare or promotion in a pay-per-view main event title fight? I think the Asakura situation is really interesting in the broader perspective of the UFC's relationship with the flyweight division. 125 pounds has survived and in some cases thrived in spite of the UFC. Demetrius Johnson, one of the greatest of all time, believed he was being undervalued by the promotion. Mighty Mouse often pointed to a lack of promotion for the weight class, and eventually they fobbed him off to one championship for what turned out to be a pretty spectacular failure in Ben Askren. Throughout this time, the UFC was even toying with the idea of closing the division entirely, until a few years ago, Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo breathed new life into the weight class with some of the best fights we had ever seen. And now with the rise of Alexandre Pantoja, a dominant but way more patient fighter, prone to decisions, the signs of the UFC's distaste for the division are kinda creeping back again. Making decisions like not re-signing flyweights on winning streaks, like Nate Maness, or cutting top 10 ranked guys like Matthias Nicolau and Muhammad Mokaev in the last year are alarm bells to some that the promotion is actively downgrading the division. And now bringing over a genuinely exciting, violent, popular fighter from overseas to challenge for the belt, it can feel like they might be fumbling it again. Posting just one video about Asakura on the YouTube page 2 days before the fight. It would not take much effort to make MMA fans care about Kai Asakura. His fights do that for themselves. And just like back in the day, looking outside of the UFC like this could save the division. Jose Aldo, Dominic Cruz, Uriah Faber, and Demetrius Johnson all built the lighter weight classes in the UFC when they came in from the WEC. The UFC has opportunities with the likes of Asakura, maybe even Horiguchi, along with rising UFC talent like Tatsuro Taira, Rei Tsuruya, Steve Erteg, Kai Kara France, genuinely exciting and violent guys to cement this division in people's minds as what it is. Just as talented, if not more, than a lot of the bigger boys. And though many are picking the champion, a classic, violent Kai Asakura knockout here could explode him into international stardom and once again elevate a division that either by the fans or by the UFC itself hasn't always gotten a fair shake. Now, as for the fight itself, most people believe Asakura is the definite underdog. Pantoja's dominant wrestling and toughness in the face of hard hitters in his title run are really important in this fight, and especially with Kai Asakura not having fought in a cage since like 2017, I think that wrestling is going to be a really important one for Pantoja. But look, Kai has a lot going in his favor coming into this one too. He's really tall, and in my opinion, it might be quicker and harder hitting than anyone Pantoja has fought recently. And in his last few, Alexandre has been hittable. So if he can keep it on the feet, Kai absolutely has a chance of cracking that iron chin and making history as the first Japanese champion in the modern era of the UFC. Either way the wind blows, this is going to be a fun fight between a violent, pressuring, damaging striker and a patient, controlling veteran, and I cannot wait to see how it goes down. Thank you for watching, guys. It's been a while since we've done Unfamiliars. I really appreciate every eye we get on it. Thank you, as always, to the MMA On Point Hall of Famers for your support, guys. We appreciate you every single time. If you guys are interested in joining, you can click the button under the video, get a whole bunch of perks, and help support the channel. Make sure you do jump in the comments, tell me what you think about how this fight's gonna go down. Like and subscribe to see more of this content, and we will see you on the other side.